Hello, today we are going to make Rendang Sapi, or beef rendang. Rendang is a method of cooking from Padang, Indonesia, which originated as a way of preparing meat so that it would be shelf-stable. You can cook meat in this rendang style, cover it and leave it on the counter for some time, and it won't go bad because of the combination of the spices and drying it out. This is a sort of a dry coconut curry, and it's one of the most iconic dishes from Padang. Now, rendang can be made with any kind of meat, but of course, Padang being in Sumatra, being mostly Muslim, it's almost, you're never going to see it with pork, but you would see it with chicken. And people will sometimes add beans, potatoes, that sort of thing. You could, in fact, just make a rendang with beans. You soak the beans until they're split, and then you would basically cook them like the meat. You just probably cook them a little bit more moist, because otherwise they'll be dry and hard. This is again a very spice-centric dish. A lot of turmeric, ginger. I'm going to add some nutmeg to this one. Lemongrass, garlic, shallots, lime leaves. Sometimes people add turmeric leaf as well as the root. Coconut, definitely, that will toast. A lot of coconut oil, and of course some chili pepper. It's again a really, really great dish, and I hope you enjoy this. And here we have basically our ingredients. Fresh turmeric root. If you had to, you could use dried turmeric, but you'd want to add it a little bit later. Watch out working with this stuff, it stains. Ginger. A little bit of nutmeg, maybe a quarter of a nutmeg. Some lime leaves. Lemongrass. Coriander seed, in this case pulverized. I have some coconut, shredded coconut here, and we're going to go ahead and roast this. And I have 6 cans of coconut milk. I would strongly recommend going with the fattiest, oiliest coconut milk you can. Basically, we're going to cook this in the coconut milk until the coconut milk boils dry, and basically it's frying in the coconut oil. And then, of course, I have the beef. I'm basically going to just, I'm making a kilogram of beef worth of this today, but you could make a lot less, and the recipe I give will be scaled down to maybe a quarter of a kilogram. Ingredients part 2. Here we have garlic, bawang putih, shallot, bawang merah, and we have crushed red chili pepper. In this case it's cabai padang, but other crushed red peppers could be used. It should probably be done fresh. Basically, you take the peppers, throw them in the blender with a little bit of water, blend them until you have a really strong puree, and then basically throw that in the freezer. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take the nutmeg and we're going to crush it, just like we did for the sop buntut. And again, I have a grinding stone here. You can of course use a mortar and pestle. You could even grate. If it's a small amount of nutmeg, I'd actually probably just use a grater, but if you pound it, the oils come out to the surface, and that's kind of nice. So I'm going to put this in the wok. And then we're going to cut the ginger and the turmeric, and I'm just going to show you quickly about the size we're going to cut it. Basically, we're going to slice it small. You can see how the turmeric is, and then this is just going to get chopped. Same thing with the ginger, and I'll show you when this is done. So this is then chopped ginger and turmeric. I'm going to go ahead and add it to the wok. We're adding this to the wok cold, without oil, and it'll become obvious why in just a few moments. And I will shift the camera over to the wok, and you'll be able to see what goes on there next. So here I have the wok. I've added my initial nutmeg, turmeric, and ginger. And to this I'm going to add some coconut. Depending on how you like it, you can add more or less. I'm going to add about like that. Don't want to add too much because then, I mean, whatever you add, you have to grind, right? And I'm going to add coriander seed. And add a fair bit of coriander seed. And then I'm going to turn the wok on to medium. And from here I'm basically going to perpetually stir this until it roasts into a nice golden brown. Now if you don't have a mortar and pestle, you definitely want to omit the coconut, but you can add the rest of the spices and you can toast them together. Especially if you're using fresh turmeric. If you're using dried turmeric, maybe just skip this part and go straight to the, just add the ginger and the turmeric straight to the coconut oil. Oh no, coconut milk, sorry. I'll come back when this is almost roasted. Just a look as we are partly done with this. We have the coconut starting to turn yellow, and at first it's going to be because the heat starts releasing the yellow dye from the turmeric. One important thing about padang food is the use of turmeric, and in this particular dish, the turmeric is usually noted as bakar, or baked or broiled, and that's basically what we're doing here, is we're roasting it, and that changes the flavor a bit. So this is continuing to go. I'll probably be back in maybe another 5 or 6 minutes when this will be nice and browning, and then we can go into the next step. So here you can see the coconut is browning quite nicely, and so we're ready to move on to the next step. So I'm going to take this off the heat. I'm going to turn the burner off because it'll be a few moments, and I will be taking this. I'll be putting it back on the grinding stone. And I'll be grinding it. So I've dumped the coconut mixture onto the grinding stone, and just like everything else we do with this, it's just kind of a pounding motion. You just keep pounding it like that until everything kind of becomes an oily mixture. So it's now been a couple of minutes. I'm continuing to pound it, and you can see the consistency is starting to change. We're starting to get this sort of moister, oilier mixture here, and this is what's going to go back in the pot. So this is nicely pounded at this point, so I'm going to put it back in the pot, and then I'll get into the aromatics. So to this, we are now going to peel our garlic, twist until you can feel it coming apart, then just simply peel the skin away. Peeling garlic is not hard, it just takes a little bit of practice. Again, now in the recipe for a quarter of, I'm just going to say a clove of garlic. These are really big, so I'm just using 2. It's not that sensitive to the amount of shallots or garlic. I'm going to take these, I'm going to put them aside here, and then I'm going to pound them just like I pounded the rest, and I'm going to kind of mash them up. Pound them for a few minutes also. And we'll come back in a few moments when that's done. So here I have the mashed up garlic and onions, and I'm going to go ahead and toss them onto the wok here. And I still have it off the heat, so it's not terribly hot. And then I'm going to add my meat and my add my meat. And then I'm going to put it back on the burner. Again, about medium. And then from here, I'm going to take my kaffir lime leaves. I'm going to tear them up a bit. That helps to release the flavor. These are kind of dried out in the freezer, but they'll work. Now what we're actually going to do here is we're going to make a coconut milk curry. And then we're going to keep cooking it through about 3 stages. So next we'll be adding the coconut milk and then adding some final stuff. Okay, so now you can hear it starting to sizzle a little bit. We're going to go ahead and add the coconut milk. Adding these ones first. They're a little bit less fatty, but as I say, you really want fatty coconut milk for reasons that'll become clear as we keep going. So 1. 2. 3rd one. 4th one. So now we've added 6 cans of coconut milk. I'm going to go ahead and bruise the lemongrass. I'm going to go ahead and bruise the lemongrass. I'll say that again so you can hear it. See? Nicely bruised. And we're going to go ahead and add this. And then we're going to add chili pepper. Now, one thing to note about the chili pepper is that this is actually a very, very, very oily dish, and a lot of the spiciness is going to be tied up in the oil. If you have trouble with spicy food, this can be a problem. I'm still going to add a fair bit. Chili. You can add as much as you like. This is one of the big things you can vary. And basically, I'm just going to let that start to cook. So I've added the 6 cans of coconut milk and the bruised lemongrass. And I'm just going to cook this for a while. I should add a bit of salt. So let's see, what's the salt? And then I'm going to just kind of cook this until it becomes what we call a gulai. And then we just keep slowly stirring it. And I'm going to add a bit of pepper too. Anyway, there we go. Salt, pepper, chili pepper, your aromatics, everything's in here, and it's going to cook into a nice curry. And then we're just going to keep cooking it until it becomes something else. So here's the first stage as it's cooking. It's not quite at the gulai stage yet. It'll get richer and more yellow as it cooks a bit more. And then as it starts to simmer down, it will turn brown, and that'll be another curry stage. And basically we will keep cooking it until most of this liquid is gone, and all we have left really is oil. So this is still at the gulai stage. It's been cooking, simmering now for about an hour and a half. It's going to simmer for a lot longer. And in a while it'll turn into a darker brown curry. And then from there we'll start to see oil pool on the surface. And then it will eventually slowly thicken up and turn into rendang. So this is the first bit. And it doesn't require stirring constantly, but you have to come back periodically and stir it. And so here you can see the rendang is just slowly reducing down. We've probably gone through half to 2/3 of the volume of liquid. And what's going to happen here is this is just, you can see this oil pooling up. That's all coconut oil from the coconut milk. And as this continues to cook, that oil is going to get more and more, and the liquid's going to get less and less. And eventually we're going to end up with something that looks very different than we have right now. So this is, by the way, extremely tasty at this stage, but it's not rendang yet. I forget what the name of this particular type of curry is at this stage. Basically, rendang will go through several stages of curry as you cook it, and so you could actually eat it at several different stages and get very different dishes. And here we are with the oil even more forming on the top. You can see there's actually a lot of oil here. As I say, all of this oil came out of the coconut milk. And as we get further, basically the last bits of liquid here will evaporate, and the solids that are left will caramelize. And that's when we have rendang. At this stage, you can see stuff still cooking away nicely. I'm actually going to add some potatoes. These are totally optional. Definitely don't have to add potatoes. You could also add like soaked beans at this point. But either way, we're going to go ahead and stir whatever we've added deeply into the curry, and we'll let things start to cook. And so now we have a rendang basa, which is a rendang which is not quite all the way cooked. The sauce is still kind of liquid at the bottom. Some people, in fact, do like to serve rendang this way. I like to cook it a bit longer though. And as this happens, it will just caramelize and solidify, and it'll be much better. And here we are, pretty much at the finished rendang. I'm still going to let it cook a little bit longer, but you can see the residues of the coconut and spices are pretty dark now. The chunks of meat are much smaller than when I put them in. And the potatoes now are cooked all the way through. The combination of the spices here and the cooking process that dries out the meat, coats it with oil, these all create a dish that's relatively shelf stable as long as it is covered. You don't want like flies, for example, getting in it. But as long as you cover it, it'll stay good on like the kitchen table, even in a tropical climate. You can imagine that if you had to slaughter a whole animal, you'd have to be able to preserve the meat, and of course this is one of the ways of doing it. And so here's the final product. You'll be able to notice that everything is kind of broken up. It's really kind of thick. It's basically oil with this coconut residue inside, and yeah, this should be delicious. This is one of those dishes that I really like to make, and it's pretty good. I have a few pieces here that unfortunately burn just a little bit, but one of the interesting things about rendang is that sometimes people actually eat it very, very, very dark, and I just tasted this here, and even the dark parts are quite tasty, and they don't taste burned. So even though those are a little bit black in some places, they're actually okay. But typically, if we were cooking it, we'd want to stir it more and end up with something which is darker, but not quite that dark. And that's rendang. Rendang is often made from, as I say, other kinds of meats. Could be chicken, I guess, in some cases, like for example with maybe some of the minorities in the area, maybe pork. Could be made with other meats as well. Sometimes people put in turmeric leaf, which I already mentioned. There's a wide variety of spices that people may or may not add. Again, this is a cooking method more than it is a particular kind of dish. And one of the wonderful things about this is you can start it and you can cook it. You can eat one kind of curry for lunch and just keep cooking it and eat a very different kind of curry for dinner. In this case, it took about 4 hours to cook on a very low heat, but you could cook it on a higher heat for less time, but at the end it needs to be on a very, very low heat. And so a few things that are worth mentioning as far as final tips. The kinds of meats that you can use for this include very, very lean, dry meats. So I have done it with rabbit in the past. You can use like round, which is often one of the cheaper cuts of beef. But you can also use the ones with all the hard proteins, because those will become chewy but not like tough. You could do shank or chuck or something like that. The final point is, I think as you play around with cooking this, it opens up a lot of doors towards other kinds of Sumatran dishes as well. And so, once again, this is a great dish, and please enjoy it. If you need help, feel free to ask in the comments.